Hey there, this is Jason. It's late April 2023, and I am next to a Weeping Santa Rosa plum that I planted last year, approximately a year and a half ago. And it's currently set up as an espalier tree. And now it wasn't always that way. I actually made a huge mistake last year where I doubted my plan and I changed up my plan at the last minute. So I want to tell you how I changed that up, the mistake I made, and what I did this year to fix that mistake. So a little bit about this orchard. When we moved in 2 years ago, there were approximately 30 trees in this orchard. I have about 6,000 square feet from fence to fence. And with 30 trees inside, that left a lot of room to work with. It was a blank canvas in many cases. So I thought long and hard when I was picking my varieties. I thought about the chill requirements. I made sure that they were suitable for my zone 10. So an example of that are these two apriums that I purchased. They're next to each other in a modified 2-in-1 planting. But apriums, they don't need a pollinizer, but they can benefit from a nearby apricot. So I made sure that I put it next to my gold kist, which is right behind it, closer to the brown fence. So that's one example. Another example of how I was being mindful of my placement here in the orchard are my banana trees. So I have these ice cream bananas, and they can grow up to 15 feet. And that's pretty tall. And if I grow a whole bunch of them like I plan on doing, they could shade out a tree that needs full sun. So I made sure that I put these banana trees on the north side of the orchard so they can grow as tall as they want and they're not blocking out any sun from a nearby tree. I also made sure I put them along the fence line. This fence that I built can be a modified trellis. These banana plants can get really top heavy when they flower, and they tend to bend over and sometimes fall over entirely. So I have a place where I can tie off those bananas in case they start to exhibit that behavior. So you might notice that I put a lot of thought in, right? And when it comes to buying new deciduous trees, I get them from a local nursery called Walter Anderson, and those trees come from Dave Wilson. Walter Anderson puts out their list of trees that they're going to sell during the bare root season, which is late December, early January here in San Diego. And they put that list out in the fall, sometime in late September, maybe early October. And for a couple months, I pore over that list. I actually take all of the items, I dump them into a Word doc, and I delete the rows that I know I don't want. And then by the time I'm done, however many trees are left over, those are the ones that I want to purchase. Just so happened that first year, that list was pretty big. One of the trees on the list was a classic Japanese plum, the Santa Rosa plum. And it wasn't the regular Santa Rosa plum, it was the weeping variety. And that's because as I was doing my research, I learned that the Weeping Santa Rosa can be espaliered. And I thought that was really interesting because I was just working on espaliering my apples. I had purchased an Anna and a winter banana that season, or I was planning on purchasing one. And I thought it would be great to continue to cover up this kind of ugly fence here with a plum. And so I did exactly that. I went to the store, I had every intention of buying a Santa Rosa plum, putting it along the fence and training it properly. Well, while I was there, I spoke to one of the staff at the nursery. Now, I'm not blaming this guy at all, but I shared with him my plan, and he said, no, you don't want to do that. Plant it as a traditional planting, put it in a hole in the middle of your yard, and you're going to really enjoy it. And for some reason, I listened to him, and I changed up my plan at the last second. So when I got home, I was still thinking espalier, but I now had the tree in a standalone hole. So I pruned the thing back to about 3 feet. And when it started to weep, the weeping happened right there at that 3-foot mark, which is terrible because when a Santa Rosa weeps, the branches are, by the end of the season, somewhere around 10 to 12 feet long. I mean, this thing puts out tremendous growth, as evident by what you can see here. This is all last year's growth. So this thing grows like crazy. And if your trunk is only 3 feet tall, well, you're gonna have a whole lot of things lying on the floor. So I built a modified trellis, and I tried my very best to deal with the hole in the location that I chose. But every time I looked over at this tree, I was so unhappy with the decision that I made because I had a plan. I knew my orchard better than anybody else, and I went and I doubted myself at the last second. So I formed a new plan. I said, all right, I'm gonna have to transplant this thing when the tree goes dormant, and I'm going to move it the entire like 3 or 4 feet over to where I should have put it from the very beginning. So as I get closer to the tree here, you're gonna see it has tons of green growth. That means the transplant worked. So far it has, and it's actually put on plenty of flowers, and those flowers, some of them have set fruit. So that's really encouraging for this year. Now, as I get closer to the trunk, you'll see what I did last year. Now, I'm gonna point out some things. This is where my cut was, right here. So this is maybe 3 feet off the ground, and all of these branches started to weep over and up and down. And I built a trellis to hold them up because it was really sloppy looking. But again, that trellis, it was put together at the last minute with scrap wood, and it was never designed to be permanent. You'll also notice that there are some branches like this one that I have my hand on right now that's sticking outwards into the yard. So with an espaliered tree, you want to make sure your branches are going to the left and to the right, and that anything that's coming out or anything that's growing towards the fence, in my case, you'd prune that off. Well, I don't really have that luxury because I was never training this tree for this style from the very beginning. I kind of let it grow wild last year. So what happened was I've got branches kind of crisscrossing left and right here, but I'm a bigger fan of symmetry than I am of making sure the branches are growing in the right direction. I have 4 branches and 4 layers of my espalier going over on the right and 4 over on the left. So I was able to work with what I had, although it's not the most desired outcome here. What I will be doing over the next several years, though, is pruning back some of these branches that I'm not happy with because Japanese plums require last year's wood or relatively new wood to fruit on. European plums are a little different. They need more established wood. Japanese plums, new wood or spurs on old wood will put out fruit or put out flowers that could turn into fruit. So for me, I'm going to have to prune back these branches at some point because they're going to get so long that I'm going to run out of room at the very end, and I'm going to have to cut them back and prune them back. So when I'm doing that, I may have an opportunity to come in here and take out some of these branches that are coming off of the trunk that I'm not so happy about. That's going to be a couple years down the road. For this year, though, I'm going to let this tree do whatever it wants this year now that I have it properly tied to the fence. And then once the leaves drop, I'm going to have a better idea of what I'm dealing with, and I'll make some modifications during the dormant season. But I almost messed this up. I was really close to coming out with an axe or a shovel and chopping that tree down, throwing it away, and starting from scratch. I was that discouraged and that unhappy with my decision to move it. And I'm really, really happy now that I was able to transplant it successfully and that it is thriving along the fence. So has anyone ever espaliered a tree other than an apple? And if so, what kind and what kind of success have you had? I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens here with this plum. This is going to be my first time doing a plum in this technique. And by the looks of it, I should have a couple dozen fruit on the tree. So I'm really looking forward to trying the fruit as well. That'll be a first for me too. All right, good luck